For years and years and years, I wanted the freedom to create my own schedule, work on my own time. And that's what I've worked towards for so many years. So I was like, I'm going to go in with everything that I have. I started using shorts every single day to provide as much value as I could. All of a sudden, people were commenting on my videos and people were engaging with the things that I was putting out there. In the month of February alone, I grew by about 30,000. I still pinch myself frequently when I go on filming trips. And I'm like, this is my work day. How did this become my work day? Like, you put me in a room full of people and I'm gonna have sweaty hands and I'm gonna stutter because that's just not my comfort zone. Anyone listening, if you are an introvert, it is possible to do this in a way where you're still comfortable.
Hey friends, in this episode of the Impact Podcast, I talked to YouTube yoga shooting star Charlie Fallows. She's been posting videos for 4 years. 2 years in, she was still stuck at a few thousand subscribers. Just over a year ago, Charlie's account took off drastically. She added over 600,000 subscribers in 12 months, and today she's a full-time yoga YouTuber. I've been working with Charlie for quite a while now and helped her monetize and scale this awesome business of hers, and it's been amazing to see her growth unfold firsthand. Obviously, I had to get her on the podcast because she's such a down-to-earth person with an exceptional mindset. So in this episode, we went into how she managed to stay consistent without seeing any results for 2 years, how an introvert like her can become an online creator who literally teaches millions, and of course, she shared loads of hands-on YouTube tactics. All right, everybody, time to meet this exceptional young woman.
I'm Charlie. I am a yoga teacher, but I predominantly focus on teaching online, mainly on YouTube. That's where my practice started. So that's why I want to focus all of my time and energy there, because I think it's the easiest way to get people practicing yoga in a way that is accessible, that fits around everybody's life.
I looked back on YouTube and your first video shows that like 4 years ago.
I think it was 4 years ago, actually. It was about 6 months after I'd graduated as a teacher, and I was using social media quite a lot, mainly just to document my own practice. And then I realized that I wanted to use the internet as a way to reach more people to teach classes. Um, so I started off small with a few classes, and back in those days, I did not have any confidence online. It was a completely different way of teaching online versus in person. They're different entirely. So for years, it was really just a process of learning how to teach online as well as teaching in person, because they're different skill sets that you have to nurture. And then about a year and a half ago, I started taking it really seriously. I'd accumulated so many skills and a lot more knowledge and understanding of YouTube, and I was able to use all of that. It compounded over time, and then I was able to really go full steam ahead, put all of my energy into it, and now it's where it is right now.
When was the moment when you realized, like, okay, you know what, actually this is going somewhere, I can really focus on this full time? Like, what were the signals?
Really, it was probably around February last year. My shorts started to get a lot of traction, and I noticed that all of a sudden people were commenting on my videos and people were engaging with the things that I was putting out there.
How many subscribers did you have back then?
So in February last year, I had 12,000.
That's insane.
Yeah, it is. It was really
That's
fast
insane.
growth last year. Um, and in the month of February alone, I think I grew by about 30,000, because I was like, I'm going to go in with everything that I have every single day, just really commit to it to see if that's what you need to do to grow. And it turns out it really was in my case. That was when I started to notice this could really be something. I see momentum. And if I just keep that momentum going, I know it will go somewhere. And thankfully it did.
Okay, before we started recording, I was like, okay, I'm not going to ask about YouTube tactics, but now I just have to ask because it's just like sitting right there. So I actually didn't know that you were at 12K followers in February last year. So like less than 1.5 years ago. What was it that you started to take seriously? Like you mentioned, you doubled down or you really went full on into this. Like, what did that mean?
Mm-hmm. So there was two things. I started using shorts every single day, and I started using them in a way to provide as much value as I could. So to explain the little details that people don't normally get explained in a class, because the class is moving too quick and teachers don't have time to explain. I also wanted to answer the questions that I knew people weren't getting answered, because Unfortunately, people ask questions constantly online, but because there's so many comments, the person that they're asking the question to might just never see it and they might just not have the time to get back to it. So I wanted to be that person who answered those questions. And I think that really set
Mm,
me apart. Also, with my long form videos, I started taking the production quality more seriously. I invested in going to a nice studio, or I tried to improve 1% each video. So, whether it was trying to improve the audio, the video, the overall setup, whether it was something I was doing as a teacher, just really focusing on the small details. And then each time those added up. And then gradually a year and a half later, I feel like now it really got me somewhere. And that was the difference.
and are you still using shorts a lot?
Yeah. Yeah. My short strategy is it's pretty much the same. The only thing that's different now is that I have to spend a lot more time thinking of new ideas because when I was new to shorts, I had loads of ideas. I hadn't really used it that much. I was like, great, I've got all of this inspiration. After a while, inspiration starts to run dry, and that's when you need to get creative with your idea generation.
ChatGPT.
Oh, yeah, sometimes.
What I know a lot of people do is that they actually repost things, like a TikTok or a reel or something that they posted before. For sure, they will talk about the same topic again. Do you do that at all?
I do sometimes redo content, but it might be that if I'm doing it 6 months later, I have a different approach to how I teach it. Maybe I've found a better way to communicate what I'm doing, or maybe it's just a different spin on the same subject. So it just adds another layer of understanding around the same theme. So I always try to add new value instead of just repeating myself. Although I do get that a lot where people will say, "Do you have a tutorial for this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, well, I do, but you're probably not going to find it because it was a year ago. So I'll just redo another one and try and make it better."
What were some mistakes that you did along that process? I mean, I'm sure there were quite a few, but do you think there were some things that were like really holding you back, and then once you started changing that, it made a difference?
Mm, a couple things. First was that I had to learn to do things in batches. I had to learn to treat it more like a manufacturing process. I think of it like this: like you have to film a week's worth of content, and then you need to edit a week's worth of content and then schedule it and do all of that within the shortest amount of time that you can so that then you've got however many days left in the week to focus on your other things. Because like short form content, it's just one part of it. So you need to learn to be able to do it as effectively as possible. And in the beginning, I wasn't. I was just doing one a day. And I was starting to feel like, how are all of these other creators doing this? And it's because they've got that like manufacturing mindset where they're just churning everything out and it's a content creation machine. Another thing
Mm.
that held me back, I would say, is I'm quite a slow talker. It takes me a while to get to the point sometimes, and shorts aren't like that. They're very to the point. People want the answer, they want you to get to it in the shortest amount of time. Otherwise, they're just going to scroll. So I really had to learn to use the least amount of words possible, get to the point as quickly as possible, and always remember that. Don't waffle, don't go off on a tangent, just explain in the simplest terms. I remember watching a video by a creator, and she said, try to make sure the words that you're using are understandable by anyone. So, by like a
Mm.
6-year-old could understand what you're saying as well as a 50-year-old. Assume that people don't know what you know. So, try to make it simple for people and adding all of these things together really, really helped. But it was a constant process of watching my analytics, trying to critique how I'd done things based on the reaction that I was getting, based on the views, going back and forth constantly. And I still do it now. It's a constant process. I don't think that ever ends with anything that you do, where you are striving to be better and also striving to meet what people want right now because it's always changing, right? People didn't used to have the short attention spans that they do now. Content didn't used to move as
Mm.
fast as it does now, but it might slow down in a few years. So you always just have to keep your eyes open to what's working. And then when that stops working, be able to pivot and be able to not get attached to one way of doing things, because it's really easy to put yourself in that box and be like, this is how I do it, and get really comfortable. But you have to not be attached to that if you want to move with the times.
Yeah, I think that's an absolute death sentence to creators when they think, well, I used to do it this way, it's not working anymore, the algorithm sucks, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Because the algorithm is just the algorithm. It's just like what people like and what they don't like. So if you turn yourself into a victim and like, well, oh no, this is not fair, then you're just gonna be overrun by 10,000 other creators that are standing right behind you, ready to take over, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Do you still post shorts daily?
Not always daily. Sometimes there might be a day or two's gap if I have things going on in my life, or maybe I wasn't quite prepared enough. But I do aim to do at least 5 a week. And I post
Mhm.
across YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook.
Do you post the exact same video or do you slightly adapt it?
It might be slightly adapted depending on the type of content, or sometimes it's adapted where the title might be different, the tags might be different, the thumbnail image that I use might be different. So it might not be the whole video. It really depends what it is.
What is the number one metric you look at in shorts? Because you were talking about YouTube analytics.
I look at views mostly with shorts. Long form video, you can analyze a little bit more section by section to look at when people are dropping off, what your retention is in the first 30 seconds. But for shorts, I'm just looking at the
Mhm.
overall thing because it's such a short span of time. And a lot of it is guesswork, right? So you're trying to assume what might have happened, and then you go away, you run some tests. Maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong.
Mm.
So it's a lot of educated guesswork, um,
Mm.
and and that's how it goes.
You don't look at retention on on the shorts.
No, I don't. Perhaps I should. People might engage with them more if I were to start analyzing it to that point.
Mm.
But also at the end of the day, the long form videos are where I put more of my time. And then the shorts are just a vehicle to try to get people's attention to answer those
Yeah.
small questions. And then maybe they go, oh, cool, I'd like to try a class with her.
What do
Mhm.
you think you massively did right when you were building your YouTube channel to over 600,000 followers?
I think it was my attitude towards trying to get 1% better with each video. And I still strive for that now. It used to be the big things that I didn't have much experience with. So it used to be the video quality, the audio quality. As I got more experience, then it turned to the little things. And it was more how much I was engaging with the camera, how good my cues were, how accessible I was making it for people, and all of these small things. But because I strive for that and I never think that I'm finished, that is what helps. I never get comfortable, and I never assume that I'm done. And I think that is a really great attitude to have with anything that you do, because once you get comfortable, you tend to plateau. And in this content creation world, you're really having to keep up with everything that everyone else is doing. Um, Otherwise, you can fade into the background, and it's not that it's really not personal. It's just that there's so much out there. The algorithm no longer
Mm.
starts pushing your content to other people. It will push someone else's if they're putting more work and more time in, if they're being more visible. So that was one of the things that I think I really did right, and I still try to do to this day, is to put people first, put their comments first, put their feedback, and try to respond to that with each video that I make.
Where do you get inspiration from? Which other creators do you look at, or do you look at other creators?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I look at Spanish yoga channels at the moment because I'm learning Spanish. And
Mm.
sometimes I really like their delivery and I try to translate some of their cues into English because I just like the way that they've put it. Sometimes there's some nuances there with their language when you translate it, and it's just a really beautiful way to put it. I love Boho Beautiful's channel. I always mention her because I think what Juliana and Mark do together is incredible. I'm not sure how much of a team there is behind them, but their quality has always been something that I've wanted to strive for in my own way. I love Breathe and Flow's authenticity. I love how friendly they are. But then I also look to some other smaller channels, and sometimes I think it's not necessarily the best teachers that have the biggest audiences. Sometimes there are some teachers that really deserve the recognition. Their skill set and their knowledge is up there, but it's just that they haven't got the platform. So I look to those people as well.
How does it feel for you to be in this situation, to be a creator suddenly and optimize your content and look at metrics and film? And you were talking about like a assembly line kind of like production. I'm saying it purely from a like personal standpoint. Like, how does it feel for you?
It feels incredible. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't feel incredibly grateful. I still pinch myself frequently when I go on filming trips, and I'm like, this is my work day. How did this become my work day? But then I realized that for years and years and years, I've been saying that I wanted the freedom to be able to create my own schedule, work for myself, work on my own time. And that's what I've worked towards for so many years. So I think when you have that in mind and you keep putting it out there and you keep working towards that, for me, it happened because that was always at the forefront of my mind. So I feel grateful, but it's not like I didn't work for this. Like I recognize that I made this happen. It wasn't a happy accident. Everything that I've done for the last 5 years has been working up to this. So I'm incredibly grateful and I try not to take it for granted. Um, because I know that this is a unique position to be in. But because of the years of work that it took to get me here, I will continue to nurture this community and to try to help people and use these platforms as a way to help people because I think ultimately that's what it should be about. So that's what I try to make it about. And in that way, sometimes I feel bad when I'm like, this is my work day. It doesn't seem fair when I get to be, out in the sun and I'm filming. And I think, well, that's not normal. That's not what the majority of people are doing. But then I try not to feel guilty about it because I think this is how I'm providing my service. This is how I'm making a difference in the world. And as long as I keep that in mind, I don't feel guilty for it.
100%. Before the interview, I went all the way down to your first video, and I played it, and I went up like a couple of lines each time. And it's really a testament to everything that you just said, because the first video is just very basic, right? Like you're in a room, the sound is terrible.
Yeah.
It's so obvious that you're not really feeling super comfortable. And then you scroll up and it's like, okay, so now the lighting's a bit better. Like definitely she's more comfortable, more confident. And you scroll up, a new mic. Okay, now the sound is better. Still a bit of echo, but okay. You scroll up, and then you go, and then you see the thumbnails get better. And it's just it's such a time lapse that you can scroll through of like how you developed and how you did that like 1% better every time. And I just love learning now that it was like 2.5, 3 years of work with, I saw like 2,500 views, even less, of course, at the beginning. And then everything happens, right? All of the work, all of the learning and getting better like pays off suddenly after all of this work. And it's like this thing of, from the outside, maybe it looks like a overnight success or something, but like this is just my experience with working with content creators, that it's just like this super long period of learning and not a lot happening, and then it pays off massively like suddenly. I was wondering, do you have a community or run a community outside of YouTube?
I have my program community. So the people that join my programs, there is a Facebook page where they can interact with each other. It's easier for them to ask questions there, and it's a place where they can share photos and videos. They can get some support from other people. There's also a Discord community that is an extension of the YouTube community, just because I was finding it really difficult to keep track of people's requests. And sometimes comments get buried after a couple of weeks. So it's a place where people can go to and request classes specifically. And there's also a community where people can engage with each other. I guess there's different communities all over on Instagram. I'm well aware that people that know me from Instagram might not know me on YouTube. People that know me on Facebook might not
Mm,
know me on TikTok, and so on and so on. There's lots of pools of people everywhere that get to know you from all corners of the internet, but they may not all go back to YouTube. So I try to be as visible as I can everywhere, because I know
mhm.
that not everyone is an Instagram user, for example, or people just prefer to keep to YouTube. Or now I just started posting on Spotify for the people that don't want to get caught up scrolling on social media. They can still engage with my content there.
The community that you have on your own platform is a paid community, right? It's for like people who bought your program and they can engage there.
It's not a subscription. The programs are just a one-time payment, but once they've made the payment, they get access to the program for life, and then they can join the Facebook group, and then they can stay in that group as long as they want. As their practice develops, even beyond the things that they're doing in their program, it might be that they start working on something else, and it's just a place to interact with people who have similar interests.
And how much time do you spend on talking to people on those communities or nurturing them?
I'm not really sure how to quantify how much time I spend. It's more like a daily, someone posts a comment, try to get back to it, or maybe I need to set aside some time each week, like I do with emails, like I do with comments and things like that, to say, okay, I'm going to block off this time and try and get back to as many people as possible. The great thing about the community is I go on sometimes and I find that I might not have commented, but loads of other people have. So that person still got the support and the engagement and sometimes the answers that they were looking for. And that's the thing that makes me super proud when I'm like, thank you for being there for each other. Because there's not many places on the internet where you get that. Sometimes I think we need more of that on the internet. So I'm happy to have a place where people can find that support.
Yeah, I kind of feel like communities are having a comeback. And now I'm seeing more and more creators actually launch communities, like whether it be like a paid community or something like school.com or something like this, where they where they actually intentionally build a community, some of them paid, and where people enjoy engaging. Hey friends, quick one. If you've got questions for Charlie or me now, or as you're watching the video, just drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear what's on your mind. Back to the episode. Does it happen to you that you're stuck or that you feel like, what the hell am I doing? And you're lost or want to give up or just have those thoughts?
I've definitely been there. Years ago, I've been there so much. I was there more so when I was teaching in person because I used to find it so exhausting and I started questioning how I was going to carry on as a teacher. As I focused more online and I built more systems to make my life easier, I created more options for myself. I started to feel less helpless. And a lot of that comes from taking action and taking control. At the time when I used to feel like, what am I doing? I realized, well, I'm not doing anything to change my situation. So how can I complain or how can I, feel upset about this because I'm in this situation because all of my choices led me here. So I need to make different choices to give myself better options. Um,
Mm.
so to answer your question, I've absolutely been there. But because I've been there, I don't want to go back there. So I try to always keep myself on the track where I'm focused, I'm working towards things and I'm working towards lots of things. I don't like to put too many eggs in one basket because who knows? And as a yoga teacher, I'm intensely aware that my body is only going to be able to withstand so much physical work. Things may change in my life. I might want to slow down. So I try to be smart about the choices that I make, which is why I teach on YouTube instead of running around town teaching in studios 5 times a day. It's just not possible to sustain that into your 40s and 50s, I don't believe. So I think it's better to create something where you can do 2 classes a week, but reach thousands and thousands of people. So that is one of the things that motivates me most.
Do you think you're an introvert?
Massively, yeah. I'm not a overly confident person in crowds. I get my energy from being at home by myself oftentimes. Um, I don't really like to make things about me, which might surprise people because I know I'm on the internet quite a lot and it would seem like only confident people put themselves out there. And it's not that. It's that I've become confident behind a camera, but it's still there's that distance there. Like you put me in a room full of people and I'm going to have sweaty hands and I'm going to stutter and I'm going to like my breath's going to be all over the place because that's just not my comfort zone. So yeah, anyone listening, if you are an introvert, it is possible to do this in a way where you're still comfortable. You don't have to be out there with all of your personal details. You can still keep that to yourself and just make it about business and just make it about the things that you want to share about.
I'm just sitting here and wanting you to like say more about this because I mean, as you know, I work with a lot of yoga teachers and movement mindfulness coaches want to build an online business. And I think many of them look at Instagram and YouTube and they just see people screaming at them and like, being these extroverted content machines. What do you tell them? Because I imagine or I know that it makes a lot of them feel like this is not for me.
Mm. I think there's 2 points here. Sure, loud people, people who are fast talkers, especially, um, people who move a lot, engage with the camera a lot, they do draw your attention. But those are also skills that you can learn. You can learn to speak quicker. You can learn to put on this facade of being confident if you need to, if it's required. Something I've had to learn is to have a camera presence. And I used to put a picture of a friend above my camera so that when I spoke to the camera, I was looking at my friend and not the camera. And it really is little things like this that you have to learn because it might not come as easy to you if you're an introvert, but there's ways that you can become comfortable online. Another thing I will say is with creating content, it doesn't matter if you're an introvert or an extrovert, you still need to be organized. You still need to do the work. Regardless of how confident you are, a lot of that work's going to be done behind a screen and no one's going to see you. The only time they're going to see you is for those 30 seconds behind a camera. So if you can turn it on, that confidence for 30 seconds, and still remain authentic and find your way of being in front of the camera, then that's going to work. But I also think there's a huge space now for people online where people gravitate to the people that are more calm. People gravitate to the people that are just like them, that are not as in your face, like loud and proud. The internet is full of people now, and there's going to be your people and there might not be your people, but it's just if you put yourself out there, it's more likely that you're going to find your people. And I think it's about that really, especially if you're a yoga teacher, like people probably aren't expecting you to be very loud. They're probably expecting you to be quite calm and quite quiet because yoga teachers have that stereotype, right? That we're all really calm and collected. So you just fit the stereotype if you're an introvert, maybe.
I think you're a really good example of that. You have your own priorities, you have your own preferences and your own character, and you're working with what you have and applying it to the online business in the best way. Like you learn where you need to learn, but you capitalize on the character that you are. So my question is, to what extent have you changed your personality to match what is required to be successful online versus staying yourself?
I don't think I've changed really. I perhaps talk less when I teach because I know that people really value the silence. If anything, I make it less about me and I just give people more chance to be with themselves. I say what I need to say and then I shut up. So, if anything, I've toned down when I want to add my bit and I just leave it to them. They're having their own experience. So in that way, I guess I've toned things down a little bit in my classes because I've always tried to stay quite private online. I've never been quite out there with all of my thoughts and opinions because I just think the internet's got enough opinions. Why do they need mine? And I think in that way, I haven't had to change because I've always been like that from the beginning. And I share the things that I think are helpful, and I don't share the things that I think aren't. So I guess you could say that that's more like a filter that I go through when I'm considering what to post. It's not that I'm changing myself, it's just that I hold things back if it's not helpful. Like, I just don't think the internet needs more noise. And I share the things that I would like people to know about if it's a new class, if it's something new that I'm working on, etc.
Let me ask you one more question, and I'm asking you this question because I ask everybody this question, which is, what is your take on imposter syndrome?
I think no matter how much you know, and in fact, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. So, the
Mm.
more you understand about a subject, the more you feel like an imposter sharing about it because you now realize that there's so much more to this. To anyone listening, it really doesn't matter how seasoned you are, whether you're a teacher, whether you're doing, something else. There will always be times in your life where you feel like that, but there'll also be times when you will feel like this is what I'm meant to be doing. You've still got the same level of understanding, but a lot of it just comes down to how you're feeling about yourself that day. We all have good teaching days, we all have bad teaching days, we all have days where I know I could do better, but it doesn't make me any less of a teacher. We all have our areas to work on, and I think that's what's most important. It's not the fact that you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. And in fact, those times when you feel like an imposter, there are really great opportunities to notice where you can improve. So I try to look at it that way. If I'm feeling like an imposter, why is it? Is it because somebody asked me a question and I didn't know how to answer it? Is it because I didn't know the best advice to give them? And then can I go away and work on that? So the imposter syndrome might seem like a negative, but actually, I think you can turn it into a positive when you go away, you reflect, and you take some time to think about the things that you can work on as a result of it. And then you'll come back so much more confident, so much more ready.
Yeah, imposter syndrome is an interesting one because I think we all feel it. Let me ask you, what is your philosophy to learning when you acquire skills or knowledge or for your personal practice?
I try not to be too linear with my learning. You learn a piece of information and it can be really easy to go down one line of thinking with it. For example, I'm on a language learning journey at the moment, and it's really easy to be quite literal in your way of understanding new words, and you become very stuck. So I try to keep an open mind with my learning and recognize that there's always more than one way of doing something, that there's always more than one way of applying information. But also, it's really important to question why, to not just take the things you learn as truth, but to discern for yourself how you apply that understanding, where you're taking it. And when it comes to being able to recall that information, it's really important to nurture ways to learn. So don't just read something and be like, okay, I've got it. Go and use that piece of information. I find it's best to read something and then try to teach it to someone because that's when I know that I've understood it if I can teach it to someone else. Same goes for my
Mm,
language learning. If I learn a new phrase, I try to use it as soon as I possibly can so I know that I can recall it. Otherwise, it hasn't gone down the levels of memory.
that's a good one.
Not being too linear, discerning for yourself what's right, because I think it's so easy to read things on the internet and assume that that's right, but you need to go and back up information. Um, yeah.
Wait, I thought everything's right on the internet.
I know you'd think so, wouldn't you? The way people are so confident in the things that they say now. And
I know, right? I know, right? Oh my God. So let me ask you, what is your philosophy to teaching, especially considering that you are not in the room with people?
my primary goal will always be to make yoga as accessible as I can. So that means when I'm teaching, I always hold in my mind, who am I making this for? What might they be coming up against? How can I give them as many options without it being an information overload? for them to be able to make their practice their own. Because ultimately, I don't want to teach and it be about me. I was always taught that you're just guiding people, but everyone is having their own experience and you're just facilitating that experience. So that is my secondary goal. It is to guide people, but give them the space to make their own observations, to learn their own lessons. And I can bring attention to the things that I think are important, encouraging people to reflect, encouraging people to consider what came up on the mat and how it can inform what's going on in their lives off mat. The lessons that they learn on the mat and how they can take them off the mat. I can encourage people to do that, but I find that most people get that anyways. So I'm really just creating the space for people to be able to reflect, to introspect, because not a lot of people have time for that in their lives. There's a lot of noise, there's a lot going on in people's lives that they don't often get the opportunity to observe how they are and what that means. But when they have the chance to do that, it then means that when they're driving around and they're getting angry at someone in traffic and they're about to react, but then they're able to witness how they're feeling and they're able to pause themselves and they're able to consider what's the best way to act here. Or when they're getting stressed out because their child is being difficult this day, they're able to put themselves in the shoes of their child and think, well, what do they need? How can I take care of them the best that I can? Because reacting, immediately might not be the best thing. I might need to consider what's best. And I think that will always be my philosophy, is to try to allow people that time, which is why I give so much time for quiet so that people can learn those lessons. Otherwise, it's an exercise class and it's not really yoga. And I think it's so important that we don't lose that in these classes, especially online, because in person, you get that in person when you're at the studio. That container is already there. But when you're online, you have to create that. And it's difficult to convey that through the screen. But hopefully, I'm able to do that. And that is one of the things that I'll always try to focus on. So I guess you could say that that's my philosophy.
Is there a difference between the content that you put on your YouTube channel and the content that people can buy from you?
So the YouTube channel is more like an everyday practice. It's more of an all-in-one. The programs take you on a journey towards an end goal. So for a lot of people, it's like, I really want to build flexibility or I really want to improve my strength, but they need to go through a consistent practice plan, a consistent few weeks of training specific things to get there, because people do a lot of this and they do a lot of that and it becomes very random. For the average person, that's totally fine because it doesn't matter if you can do a handstand or a headstand or whatever. You're moving your body and it's enough. But for the people that do have the goals, that want to improve certain areas, that's where the programs are. And that's why I create them, because it gives people that structure and it gives them the accountability to show up for it when it's laid out for them and they know they're on a track.
So since we're talking about teaching, in your experience, how is teaching online different from teaching offline?
The biggest difference is when you're in person, you get feedback straight away. You can see people. You know if people haven't quite understood your cue or if that transition didn't quite make sense. You get firsthand feedback and you can go and give help to people. You It kind of feels like you're more of a teacher when you teach in person, because you can go and help people make small adjustments. You can go and help people make sense of things, where online, there isn't someone in the room helping you with your alignment. So the challenge online is you have to be thinking about all of the options that you can offer people so that that person is informed and knows how they can make the practice work for them. You have to get really, really clear with your cues, because people aren't just practicing you with you from your country. They're going to be practicing with you from all over and they're not native speakers. So you can't use overly complicated language because it's going to confuse people. You have to assume that everyone is at a basic level of English. So that's something to consider. You now need to engage with a camera instead of walking around the room. You need to consider all of the filming, editing, background lighting, that whole setup. Whereas in person, you just turn up and you teach. The studio is probably clean for you and things like that. The mats are laid out. There's not so much groundwork beforehand, whereas online there is. Online, people do get to know
They
you,
get to know you. You don't get to them, yeah.
it's hard to have that same level of back and forth because there might be thousands of people and only one you. So it's very difficult to create that same sense of closeness. And that's something that I've really struggled with for a long time because I wanted to treat everyone with the same amount of care and to give everybody the same amount of time. But it's becoming less and less possible for me, and I've had to come to grips with that. That
Mm,
is one of the challenges online. You want to give to everybody. You've only got so many hours in the day. So now you do what you can and you have to be okay with that. Otherwise, you'll have no work life balance and it will eat away at you. So, those are
yeah.
all of the highs and lows of both teaching in person and teaching online. There's not so many lows of teaching in person, although it is quite tiring. Um, yeah.
You know, one observation that I've made over the years, the average yoga studio, and that's where most people practice yoga offline, they have a schedule and then they often have, like 5, 6 different class types. And then whenever you go to a certain class type, you will have a variation of, it could be like a yin class or it could be a vinyasa flow class or something. Most of the time, they're not really themed, like officially themed. You go to a class that is about like hamstring flexibility, for example, right?
Mm.
But on YouTube, it's not like that. On YouTube, classes are most of the time very targeted. So they'd be like 50 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And most of them are themed, right? 30-minute morning yoga flow, 20-minute hamstring flexibility, 45-minute, like, I don't know, high intensity strength or something. But in terms of the classes being beneficial and feeling like I'm getting what I want out of it, to me, online classes are like leagues away, way more helpful towards my goal. Did that ever cross your mind?
Absolutely. Because when you go to a studio class, you have no say in what is focused on in that class. Great teachers will challenge you and will try to mix things up and will put things in your path that will help you have new experiences. But online, you can just search for what you want and hopefully find it within a couple of clicks. So there's no hoping that a pose is going to come up in the class. You know, you might have a direct line of communication with that teacher and be able to ask, can we work towards this pose? Or better yet, you might have a class that just works towards that pose. And it might be like a peak pose class with it in the title. And then you know, this is the class for this pose. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Um, so yeah, I do think in many ways online is a really great resource for people who know what they're looking for and want to work on that specifically. It's really difficult because you don't know what injuries, what history people have. So I used to teach in person in a physiotherapist clinic. So I used to get people all the time who were recommended to come to the classes because they had an injury, and I would turn up and I might have one class plan, and that would just have to go out the window because someone turns up and they've got an injury that I didn't know about. And now I need to accommodate for that injury. So I can't do the things that I've got planned. And that can affect things a lot in in-person studios. Like the class that I teach at the moment is an intermediate class. And people know when they're coming to that class that then there will be challenges. So they know come to the class when they've got energy, when they're in that mood, when they want to be challenged. Um, but if you go to an all levels class, it's likely that it's probably going to cater more to beginner than it will to advanced because there's more people at that level in most studios.
Okay, so I have one last question for you. And this one is another one that I ask everybody. How do you deal with haters, Charlie?
I expected this
Do you
question.
get a lot? Yeah, you've probably seen it on my Instagram or something. Yeah.
I don't get many, but I just don't even I don't respond. I try not to take it personally. Something I always tell myself is that if I'm not gonna think about this in 48 hours, if it's not gonna matter in 48 hours in anything that happens, whether it's something goes on in the business, in my personal life, just don't let it shake you because it's not really gonna be that important if it's not gonna be important in 48 hours. So if I see a comment and I'm a bit like, oh, that's a bit mean. I just brush it off. I might think it, but I don't need to react because I find by reacting to it, you just prolong it. Whereas you can just scroll past it and in 5 minutes you've forgotten about it. So I think the best reaction is no reaction. And that's how I deal with it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know what's funny? Today I was talking to someone else who asked me this question, and I gave them a very similar answer, but I told them, when you're, 90 years old on your deathbed, will this matter? And the answer is no. But I prefer the 48 hours because it's so much more. It actually is so true, right? You don't even go that far until the deathbed. It's like,
Mm.
48 hours. What's your favorite platform right now besides YouTube?
Mm, I'm a big fan of TikTok because I feel that I learn more. I learn a lot of like Spanish. Sometimes I learn really great life hacks. I think it's the best and worst platform. It's really dangerous for doom scrolling. But if you're
Hmm.
disciplined and you just use it, 5-10 minutes a day to take some information in, then it can be really helpful.
Okay, cool. So definitely make sure to check out Charlie on TikTok as well. And you mentioned Spotify as well, right? So
Mhm.
maybe that's something for everyone who doesn't want to do the doom scrolling.
Yeah, yeah. That's why I did it. Someone messaged me and they said, I want to practice with you, but every time I go on YouTube, I get distracted. And I'm like, well, here's another option. And also because a lot of people have Spotify memberships, but not YouTube memberships. So if you're already paying for Spotify, you can download the classes. And then when you don't have Wi Fi and you're traveling, you've got the class on your phone. And then, it makes it easier for people. So
And it's also monetized, right?
not at the moment now, no. It'd be nice to get it to a point where it's monetized, because I'll probably start making content specifically for Spotify. But that's probably gonna be a long road to get there because I'm not quite sure what Spotify's monetization requirements are.
Sorry, but I got to jump on that. How would
Yeah.
content for Spotify be different to YouTube content?
So I might focus more on meditations or
So audio stuff.
yeah, yeah, mainly just audio. Who knows in the future? It might be a podcast, it might be um just a little talk about things, just like a daily reminder. There's lots of options there beyond like the video classes that I'm doing at the moment. So it just opens another door for me. And that is a tip for any yoga teacher who may be listening is to try to open as many doors for yourself as you can.
Yeah, this is a big takeaway from this conversation. Like, it is really clear that it's not a coincidence. You have put in so much work and brain power and dedication into building what you've built. So massive inspiration for everybody, I think. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of this. Before I let you go, where do you want to send people? Where can people find you?
Practice with me on YouTube. If you've got goals, join me in the program community. You can find all my programs on my website. If you just want to tune in with me on social media, then Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, I'm everywhere.
Super looking forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks and take care, everybody. Thank you so much for watching, listening. I hope you got value from this episode. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Bye.
And that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to check out Charlie on YouTube. And if there's anything you'd like to ask Charlie or me, drop your questions in the comments below. We read all of them and would love to hear what's on your mind. And by the way, we have several more interviews with creators like Charlie on the channel, so feel free to check those out too. Appreciate you all. Thank you and see you in the next one. Peace.